The hottest topic in the 49ers world right now is revolving the firing of Steve Wilks and who's going to come in to replace him. But we don't have the replacement just yet. So the talking point right now is, was Steve Wilks a scapegoat? Did he get wrongly fired or let go? He only allowed, 19 points to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. The defense played really well in that game. It was he wrongfully let go? Was he a scapegoat? That is the main talking point right now on social media. Everyone's trying to discern, well, how could they let Steve Wilks go? He was the best coach in the Super Bowl. And then you have the other side of it who are like, well, did you watch the season? Did you watch how many issues that the 49ers had trying to make Steve Wilks work within what they were trying to accomplish? And as we know, it wasn't easy to start. The set of circumstances were very unique. I've personally never seen this before, but when you keep your entire staff and your system in place, but you lose D'Amico Ryans to a head coaching job and you don't want to change a thing other than just bringing in a defensive coordinator to plop in and run that same system. However, that's not his system. And he has 18 years in the NFL on the defensive side of the football in regards to coaching, doing it his own way. And then you take a guy like that, you drop him into this new environment, new coaches. He didn't bring anyone with him, none of that, which is typically what is done with, coordinators, and expect it to just go smoothly. And so I think a big part of this is looking at it in totality, right? Obviously, we understand we are going to evaluate the game that just happened where the defense played really well, but we also have to look at this for the entirety of the season. And who better to give their thoughts on this than Steve Young? Steve Young does a phenomenal job of kind of looking at things from multiple perspectives. He's been in these buildings. He's been in these situations, so he can really provide some phenomenal insight. So Steve Young joined KNBR yesterday, and he reacted to the news of Steve Wilks being fired, and this is what he had to say.
All right, so we have the Steve Wilks news today, and look, you're not making the decisions, but what I am curious about is, from the outside, my read on this is Kyle hired a guy that he knew was not perfectly aligned philosophically, probably thinking, hey, we'll get a different kind of voice in the room, might create something interesting. Clearly, I think that lack of philosophical alignment got in the way over the course of the season, so they move on. What I'm curious from you is someone who's been in locker rooms, how do you find that sort of happy zone where it's the right amount of conflict between a coordinator and a head coach? Because it seems to me he was searching for something, but it turned out to be not the right kind.
Yeah, I call it, I'm going to say two things. One is creative tension. Like, we don't necessarily get along, but there's tension between us, but it's creative. Like, we bring out the best in each other. And that's what you want. But I'll call it toxic tension. I don't think it was toxic, but I think sometimes it just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't bring out the best in us. It frustrates us. It brings us, and so those are times when you gotta move on, because it's just not, it doesn't work. Yeah, there's tension, and we don't necessarily get along. We don't necessarily, see eye to eye. But there's benefit. There's abundance in the relationship. It's when there's not abundance in the relationship where it doesn't create a 1 + 1 = 3, or like a sense that despite the fact we don't agree, or philosophically even don't agree, that's okay. That doesn't necessarily matter. What does it bring out in us? You and me, our groups, our teams, as a whole. And so I got to believe that this decision was made based on, nothing against anybody. It's just that in context, we weren't abundant. And the truth of the matter was, in the last 6 weeks, nobody was. Since Christmas, we've not, other than that first drive before the fumble, we really haven't been who we were. And so I think maybe that's where the abundance of the most important part of the season is, when it doesn't work. It's like, look, we got to try something different.
I think most of the points that Steve makes are pretty much the reason why the 49ers made a change and they moved on. It just wasn't a fit. It really was showcased all season. And again, I keep referencing that one zero blitz play against the Minnesota Vikings week 7, where they give up a big touchdown, ultimately is a huge difference in the game when it was not required. You did not need to blitz. But again, part of who Steve Wilks is a blitzer. That's kind of where as all these years as a defensive coordinator, he attacks with pressure. And that's not how the 49ers have necessarily been built. They would much rather rush 4 and get home with 4 and play coverage on the back end. And so we saw it pop its ugly head in the Super Bowl in overtime, where Steve Wilks, he's showing zero blitz, no disguise, and Kyle Shanahan times out on him and changes the play. And again, we're not just looking at the results of the Super Bowl and saying, well, like, oh, well, look, the defense played really well. So what are we doing here? You have to look at the whole season, and you have to look at the fit, and you have to look at how these guys work together. And just like Steve was talking about, you might not agree on everything, but did that make them better or did it make them worse? And in all honesty, it just felt like a lot of this year from the defensive side of things wasn't what we've been used to. And that's going to happen. Things are going to change, and play is going to go up and down and peak and valley. But at the end of the day, we didn't see a ton of positives come out of it. It was more of just trying to get back to even more than anything else. And man, when you have a winning roster, I do believe the 49ers have another shot to make a run at this next year. Why not cut your losses now, admit that this didn't work, and you have a laundry list of quality candidates who could come in and fill that role. So it's going to be fascinating to see what the 49ers ultimately do here. But I don't believe Steve Wilks was scapegoated. I think that's, again, the big talking point. It's like, listen, at the end of the day, Steve Wilks wasn't a great marriage for this defense. And listen, we knew it was a challenge coming in. We knew it was going to be difficult coming in. We knew it was a hard task. So listen, it didn't work and they made a change. And now the 49ers are going to try to do something different. And hey, I'm not mad at that. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Did they want to run it back with Steve Wilks again and expect different results? Or did they see enough where they could be like, all right, we need to make a couple changes here? So that's the way I'm looking at it. Steve, it kind of feels like he felt the same way. What do you guys think? Is Steve Wilks the scapegoat? Did he get wrongfully terminated? Was this unwarranted? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.